Welcome to the Josh Button Podcast, where we discuss health, wellness, and outliers from society. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Josh Button Podcast. Today I have Ethan Pompeo. My man, I refuse to define you by what you were diagnosed by, but your story is quite awesome, and I know it needs to be shared everywhere. You can do a better job introducing yourself, but tell us first what PANDAS is and how this came to be in the first place.
Sure. So PANDAS is not that cute black and white cuddly bamboo munching bear we all know and love, right? It's an acronym. Everybody looks at me with like wide eyes when I say what it is. It's Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorders Associated with Strep. Basically, it's a strep throat infection or sometimes other pathogens that cause an unusual antibody response, an autoimmune response in your body. In my case, my strep antibodies went off the charts, and antibodies are one of the few compounds that can cross the blood-brain barrier, meaning these compounds entered my brain and caused inflammation in an area where they were not supposed to, my basal ganglia, which is the motor cortex of the body. So in essence, I was plagued with severe motor tics, lack of motor function control, severe anxiety, OCD, all kinds of neurological symptoms that took me from a relatively healthy, normal kid to quite disabled.
How old were you when this happened, when this occurred?
I was 13 years old, and actually, PANDAS is it's a pediatric diagnosis. Most of the time, kids are a lot younger, but adult diagnosis is becoming more widely accepted, and 13 is usually like in the older range.
So do they have another acronym for adults?
No, so there's PANDAS. PANDAS is specifically the associated with strep version, whereas PANS could be other pathogens, Lyme, mold infestation, parasitic infection, anything that could cause a similar antibody response, but not strep.
So let's go back to the beginning. You're 13. You developed strep throat, and then all of this started happening while you were infected. After the infection, did you take antibiotic?
So I had strep repeatedly as a kid. I remember being on and off antibiotics at least a handful of times growing up. The tricky part with PANDAS, this was almost 20 years ago, and nobody even knew what this was. And even today, very few people are aware of PANDAS. So I do a lot to make awareness and advocacy in this area. We're building a community of people and helping educate physicians so they can properly diagnose and treat patients. But at the time, we had no idea what was causing this. I mean, it was kind of an abstract concept to associate a strep throat infection with all these neurological symptoms I was having. We never put two and two together. So I was actually misdiagnosed with Tourette's syndrome as a kid, which essentially was a label they used to throw prescription drugs at me.
So they did that just because of the tics, because of that one symptom that was coming from neurological issues.
Right. Yeah, we had no idea that it was inflammatory driven. We didn't know that there was an antibody issue related to the strep throat infection. Simply, we knew that I had these tics, I had this anxiety, I had these fits of rage related to the frustration I felt in terms of not being able to control my body. So the doctor's first course of action was like, let's prescribe you medication to treat the symptoms and treat the tics. Meanwhile, the inflammation and the infection festered within me and everything continued to get worse.
Right. So over this last 20 years, has the opinions changed? Has it evolved? Has anybody been talking about gut microbiome and antibiotics having anything to do with this? Or
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the research is still not where it should be, I'll be honest, but we're doing a lot of work in that space. And today, experts estimate that 1 in 200 kids have PANDAS, or at least the associated symptoms. So it's something that's not even uncommon at this point. So I think as we learn more about this and learn how it affects, especially our kids, we'll continue to research more and more and dive into this and understanding how it works. Still, you can go to the doctor, and chances are your pediatrician is not going to have any idea what PANDAS is. So you have to seek out specialists, and there are very few of them. And even once you do find them, it's difficult to get on a treatment protocol that works for you. So I've been fortunate to meet with several physicians who know this backwards and forwards, who have put me on a path to healing. But a lot of that onus was on me to make my own lifestyle changes and find things that helped and that worked for me.
right. Now, with that said, years ago, I know for a fact doctors, especially doctors, weren't talking about nutrition, weren't talking about ways to address symptoms that might be caused by nutritional deficiencies or any of the other things that we know have caught up with us recently.
Right.
So back then, was anybody actually even aware? Or was anybody saying anything?
Well, I will say, by the time I was 17, I had been on over 40 different prescription meds. So, as my parents, they were my advocates. They took me from doctor to doctor, but it was almost like the same routine every time. And I soon developed what I call physician fatigue, which I was just sick of going to the doctor, sick of trying meds, sick of getting the same old story. And so I kind of threw in the towel for a while and just succumbed to my illness, succumbed to the symptoms for a long time before I started to heal. But I mean, I would say a lot of people today still aren't aware. And one thing that I do on an annual basis is I help run the a 5K fundraiser in Washington D.C. It's an association with the Alex Manful Fund. Susan Manful is an amazing person, another amazing story, but it's all PANDAS related. And what we do is we fundraise for CME credits and physician education credits, which essentially we fundraise in order to give physicians secondary education specifically on PANDAS treatment and diagnosis. So we're trying to give more access to education to physicians so that we can help more people and make the road a little bit easier for people who are dealing with this.
Well, now you touched on a couple of things there that I definitely like to get into. First is you threw your hands up and you were ready to give up on the process because
Mm.
you had, faced failure so many different times in so many different ways, and I'm sure it was the taxing process and somewhat demoralizing. So, with that said, do you feel like coming to the end of that part of your journey actually led to healing, or was it an essential part of your process?
Well, you face failure, and when you're dealing with disability, it's really easy to get in a mindset of isolation and depression and loneliness. And I absolutely felt that for a long time. But I realized eventually that, all these, 40 different medications, all these doctors, all these failures, it wasn't the end of the road for me. I simply found 100 ways that didn't work for me, right? So I kind of narrowed down what didn't work, and it led me to a point where I could discover what actually did work for me, which wasn't medication, but lifestyle change, supplementing my body so that I could reduce inflammation naturally, right? Using the tools we've been given on earth here that aren't synthetically manufactured. So I can get into all that, but I like to make the body mind spirit connection because if you break your arm and you go to the doctor, he's going to put your arm in a cast. You walk away 3 weeks later, you're better. It's like cut and dry, straightforward. But when you go with an unknown autoimmune disorder, it can be very, very complex and difficult to diagnose, difficult to treat. So I like to break it down into those three parts, body, mind, and spirit, because there's no like miracle pill in my experience that you can take that's going to just get rid of all your problems. So you have to focus on body, and we'll just be specific. We'll talk about PANDAS today. Body would be the strep infection, right? The antibody release within your basal ganglia that's causing the inflammation. You need to focus on reducing that inflammation and healing physically. The mind is that mental state that I told you, like I gave up, said, I'll probably never find an answer. I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. I'm depressed. I'm lonely. I'm wallowing in my symptoms. I had to get over that. And a big part of that was learning to accept my situation. But for the longest time, man, like even 5 years ago, I would not have been comfortable coming on here and talking to you about this, like at all. Like I didn't want to talk about it. I was dealing with so much as it is. The last thing I want to do is like talk about pandas. But getting over that and realizing there's nothing to be ashamed about here, right? Being open and honest about my situation. When someone saw me ticking in class or at work and said, "Yo, are you okay?" Instead of getting angry at them and upset with myself, I could say, take a deep breath. Let me answer you and say, I have these tics. It's something that I deal with. I'm fine. I'm not having a seizure. And that was the end of it. They were asking out of genuine concern, not to like meddle in my business. They're like, "Hey, man, are you okay?" So coming to a place mentally where I can just be okay with that and acceptance was actually incredibly freeing, taking the weight and the anxiety off my shoulders and just saying, if this is part of who you are, then like that's all right. Roll with it, man. And that was incredibly freeing, and it also put me in a position where I can come on to like your show and talk about this and provide, maybe offer hope to people who are dealing with the same situation. And I built a huge community now of people who are dealing with this or know people that are dealing with this, and we can talk about it and find solutions together, and it's great. And the last piece of the puzzle is that the spirit, the spiritual aspect, which has a little bit to do with what I was talking about. But just surrendering to the higher power, to God, for me was huge, because for many years I was looking to my doctors and these meds as God, the only thing that could help me, and realizing that that didn't work and that was not a path to healing for me was big. So I take time for prayer and meditation every morning, quiet time, solace, filling my day with things I really enjoy and that bring me fulfillment are huge, because for a long time I ignored those areas of my life, and yeah, it was a mess.
Oh man, I have a lot there. I had a roommate. I had a roommate right out of high school who was a good buddy of mine, and he started developing these ticks.
Mm,
At the time, we wouldn't actually bring it up. A
right.
couple of us in the room would see it and would wonder, is this going to get worse? And never really brought it up with him. And what we were gathering is that we were all thinking it was probably from losing a loved one, and it was his father. And when he
Mm,
had lost him, we thought, oh, maybe this is just a traumatic event. And 20 years later down the road, I see him and he doesn't have any of those things. So
interesting.
yeah, I don't know whether it was related to that specifically or not. Never had the conversation, but I had encountered that. So another thing, the mind, body, spirit. If you're going back in time, if you could go back and talk to yourself at 13 years old, do you think influencing yourself with some of this information could have maybe perhaps spared you from that, part of the journey in and out of doctors' offices? Do you think that you could have done without that and come to the same conclusions?
I mean, absolutely, it would have helped, right? But I think the first 10 years from 13 to my early 20s was essentially trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So, yeah, knowing what I know now, it would have been a much, much easier journey. Instead of taking medications, if I had just focused on taking anti inflammatory supplements, eating an anti inflammatory diet, instead of having a lethargic lifestyle and looking to other substances for relief, I could have started exercising and getting in the gym, which has been a huge pathway for healing to me. So there's all these things that, quite frankly, we all know we should be doing, whether we're sick or not. But we generally, I will say, from just observation, everyone generally ignores these areas of our health until a crisis hits, like a heart attack or an autoimmune disease or anything, right? Then it's like a wake up call. Oh man, I need to start eating right. I need to get in the gym. So I think going back and telling myself, look, man, you need to take responsibility for your health now instead of just like hoping a doctor will heal you, would have been huge.
So do you realize that that's exactly what you're doing for everybody else at this point?
Bro, I think it's my life's purpose, to
Yeah,
be quite honest with you, you know?
yeah. I mean, I'm sure I knew that before I had this conversation that you knew that, but I never really know when people have gone through all of this. It's agony. I know that you went through agonizing times and you went through trying times and you had a long process. But do you know that you did all of that for the greater good of so many other people, and that there is a silver lining to it? And no, you won't be
Mm.
able to go back and talk to yourself at 13 years old, but there's probably somebody listening here who's going to go, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to take my kid to the doctor, or maybe I'm not going to tell
Mm.
my nephew that he needs to go to the doctor. Maybe I'll start addressing these lifestyle changes first and foremost. And if we can get enough people on board with that thought process, I don't want to say we put allopathic out of business, because like you said, you break your arm, you go in, that's great. But we shouldn't needlessly be going and putting ourselves and our loved ones through this process that's really not getting us the answers or the results that we really want. And I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if I didn't go through some of the same experiences you have, just witnessing it firsthand and seeing failure over and over and over and over again, and just refusing to let my message be the same, to be that repeated failure, and to be dealing with the same struggles that I think most people that go for any of these autoimmune or internal health issues and just don't get the results that they want. So your diet, what conclusions did you come to that work for you? You said anti-inflammatory diet.
Sure. So, and I say this all the time. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor, so I don't like to recommend like, go dairy free or this and that. Diet is going to be different based on the inputs that their body needs. But what I will say that, there's things you can apply to anybody's life to make you healthier in terms of diet. And for me, those things are getting rid of processed foods, getting rid of sugars, minimizing your alcohol consumption, all these things that our culture has normalized that are absolutely detrimental to our health, that we consume every day. So in general, I think the idea is to step back and really push back against what the culture has been telling us and really analyze our diet from a fresh perspective. Like, is this bowl of Lucky Charms that I'm handing my kid really worth it? Like, yeah, he loves it, but like, is there, I joke because my 4-year-old, her favorite treat in the world is a can of sardines. I mean, she freaks out when I bring them and she loves it, gobbles them down. And that's like one of the healthiest things you could possibly eat for in terms of a snack.
Mustard or no mustard?
She eats them straight up, man. So, but I really appreciate what you said about, going back in time and giving myself that message, because that's so encouraging. And it's true. Like, everybody, all of us are going to be presented with some kind of obstacle or challenge at some point. And if you haven't faced that yet, you will. So prepare yourself while you have the chance and the opportunity, right? And then again, knowing that you're not out there battling alone. Like, I don't think you're ever going to be in a situation that someone else isn't walking through at the same time. So finding those people, building that community is key. And anyway, I just appreciate you saying that, because I hope, my goal is that I do this and even one person listens to this and says, hey, this is helping me out. This is encouraging.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to create ripple effects far beyond my show, far beyond, your own life. And we might not never see them results, those persons individually. Just know that putting this out there is definitely, it's creating that wave. It's energy. It's undeniable. You can't stop it. And I agree with you. That's exactly what purpose is, applying these struggles and these things that we've conquered in one way or another with the next generation and with other people, so that they can, hopefully have a little bit easier ride than we did, and that we can all become a healthier place. And just as well as anybody else, we've had chronic failure of health in the US and the biggest healthcare market in the world. We have the unhealthiest population. We need more Ethans out there sharing this message
Well, thank you.
So tell me about Green Valley. How did that come about?
So, yeah, Green Valley Nutrition. Again, my logo is a panda here, and it just shows, you said in the beginning of the show, you're not going to define me by this, but I have embodied PANDAS as who I am. Like, I went from being unwilling to talk about it to making it my main message, and that's been freeing for me. But in terms of what I do with my company, we are a state-of-the-art CBD manufacturer here in Virginia. And if you're unfamiliar with CBD, it's not a cannabis product. It's all of our products are actually THC free, meaning they're non-intoxicating. It's totally removed from the dispensaries and the recreational form of cannabis. CBD is nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory. And so when we look at reducing inflammation in the brain or any other part of the body, CBD is incredibly effective at doing so, and it's a natural plant-based extract. It's been studied thoroughly for toxicity. There is no known toxic amount of CBD you can take, meaning it's incredibly safe for humans. And so I kind of fell into the world of CBD serendipitously. I had been smoking cannabis for years and years as the only tool in my arsenal that actually worked for me. I think going through 10, 15 years of pharmaceutical treatment normalized the use of substances and pills and these kind of foreign treatments in my mind. So stepping into the world of illicit drugs was like no big deal. Right. And I came from a very conservative family. I mean, my parents busted me, I don't know how many times. And it came down to one evening where I came home from school and my dad said, hey, have you been smoking? And I said, why are you asking me this? Like, how do you know? And he said, well, you're just so calm and relaxed. And I said, Dad, you got it. This is why I'm doing it. And he kind of realized, like, okay. And so again, like, I'm not condoning the use of cannabis at all, because the side effects of that caught up with me too. The THC affected my anxiety very negatively. I experienced some paranoia. Just inhaling particulate matter is hazardous for our health, so I do not advocate for that. um, Moving into CBD, as I discovered what that was the anti-inflammatory compound that was treating my symptoms from cannabis use. I just had no idea. And once that's another story, but once I discovered what CBD was, I realized, man, I can take this in a oral form, an encapsulated form. I can rub it onto my hands and knees. It takes away my pain. It calms me down. It reduces my tics. It helps me feel better. And I don't have to smoke, and I don't have to carry illegal substances, and I don't have to risk my health. It was like a miracle for me. Coming back to Virginia, it was really hard to get your hands on this stuff back in 2015, 2016. It was still considered cannabis because people didn't understand what it was and we weren't researching it like we should. But a lot of that has changed. And so I started making these products in the spare bedroom of my house, just kind of formulating, experimenting with dosing and seeing what worked for me. And soon my friends and family caught on and said, "Man, what are you doing?" My grandmother wanted some for her aches and pains, and my mother-in-law wanted some for her sleep. It kind of just took off organically from there. And today we operate a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. I have over 30 different products shipping internationally into all 50 states, and really offering a product that people can trust that really helps them feel better. So it's been an amazing journey, and I'm like super proud that I can offer a product that actually helps people and doesn't hurt them.
So how were you deriving it originally? Did you get like Charlotte's Web or certain specific strains that were very low THC or no THC, or did you actually find straight hemp?
So I moved to Colorado the day after I graduated college. College was a long, arduous journey for me, 5-year bachelor degree program. After I finished that, I just wanted to change a pace. So I moved to Colorado. I got a job on the oldest organic farm in the state, and I just fell in love with the lifestyle, working outside, getting my hands dirty, eating farm to table fresh produce, talking to new, interesting people who are different than me. Talk about a lot of lifestyle changes, right? But in Colorado, they are a lot more progressive than most other states in terms of cannabis legalization and cultivation. So I was introduced to the hemp in Colorado. The farmer who I was working for, his cousin owned a 300-acre hemp production facility, and they were growing for CBD production. And so that was my introduction. He took me to visit, and I looked at the field and said, "Man, this is what I expected Colorado to look like." But I didn't know that it wasn't being grown for like the dispensaries, right? It was being grown for CBD. So I said, "What is this?" And then moving back to Virginia, I actually reached out to some of those people who I'd met in Colorado, and they would ship me the active ingredients, and I would use that to manufacture my products. Since day one, I've been THC free, and the reason is because I had been using THC for so long. I knew what it does. I knew what it did. I knew what the benefits were, and just the oral fixation of smoking in itself is habit forming, but cannabis is absolutely addictive. And I struggle with that for a long time. And CBD has actually been shown in clinical trials to reduce that habit forming potential for many drugs and many addictive compounds. And so that CBD actually helped me move away from smoking and into a lifestyle of like using very medicinally. Ironically, CBD was it's a cannabis derived substance that got me away from using cannabis. So it's kind of funny how that worked, but so that's how I started sourcing it and using it. And today we actually source all of our material from Virginia grown organic hemp. So again, the laws have changed, the whole industry has changed. There's a lot of farmers and growers around here who are maybe shifting from tobacco farms or chicken farms to hemp production. So I can get my hands on some really high quality hemp, extract the oil, refine that into pure CBD, and we use that active ingredient to manufacture all of our products.
Do you know if hemp farming actually has some of the same challenges as marijuana, as cannabis, as THC? As far
It
as
certainly does.
yeah.
I mean, so scientifically, the two plants are the same. They're both cannabis sativa in Latin terms, right? So the scientific nomenclature, they're the same plant. I like to tell people that it's like a Chihuahua and a Great Dane. They're both dogs, but they're completely different. They don't really resemble each other. They have separate purposes. Same with hemp and cannabis. So they're the same plant, but they've been bred over the years to either produce high levels of THC or high levels of CBD. So they're really quite different on a chemical level. So I'd say, if you're looking at those big buds that you see on High Times magazine, the stuff you see in the dispensary, that's typically going to be grown indoor in a very closed, controlled environment. Because if any cross pollination or any environmental factors trigger a response in that plant, it's going to change the chemical makeup of the plant, and they're going after high THC, so that's no bueno. With CBD, it's a lot more, I would say, I don't know, versatile.
Is it resistant to pest and to molds and different things as well?
Exactly. Yeah, resilient is the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. Most of my growers are outdoor cultivated, so we're using sun energy to
Hmm.
cultivate this. Now, there are some pests that can get in there. There's the risk of spider mites or a different kind of mildews, but if you have any experience, it's very easy to avoid getting those pathogens, exposing your plants to those pathogens. And furthermore, we do thorough testing of all our materials before, during, and after the manufacturing process. So we test while the crop is being grown. We test after it's been grown. We test after it's been cured. We test again after the oil's been extracted. And then we test again once we've isolated the CBD. And finally, we test the products at the end. So we are third party testing at least 5 or 6 different points along that product journey to ensure that there's no pesticides, no mycotoxins, no mold, no residual solvents, right? We're testing for everything because, again, like me, I have sensitive health needs. Many of our customers have sensitive health needs. We want our customers to be sure they can trust this product and it's not going to make things worse, right? So that's very important. But if you're interested in the farming aspect, I think it's a very special plant, and anybody who's grown cannabis or hemp will tell you the same thing. It's very unique. It's a very special plant. There are over 36 different medicinal compounds that we're aware of in hemp. So we're really just scratching the surface in terms of what we know and what we can do with it.
So, do you think another thing that you had said there that as they, I guess, bred higher THC levels into cannabis and they bred hemp to have a better CBD content or a higher classification, do you think there was any of the cons, any of the negatives on that side of production and that side of breeding?
Yeah, so certainly there's a few different things I can talk about there. I'd say if you're asking about THC, I've heard many old timers, right? People who grew up in the 70s say, "Man, that's not the stuff we had." It's like way stronger and more potent now than it was before. And there are some benefits to that, right? You don't have to consume as much to get the same effect, but at the same time, like now I'm at the point where I haven't used that compound in years, and if I were to go back and use it now, I would be fried. I would be space cadet. And that's kind of scary when you think about like your high schoolers or your kids going and using that, right? It's not like it's very intoxicating. And so they've gone to like the next level. I mean, some of this stuff is testing at over 30% THC, very potent. I think like in the 70s, we were looking at like 6 to 8% THC. So we're like on magnitudes higher concentration of that active ingredient. With CBD, I think it's very fascinating. The highest CBD content flower I've ever seen is 10%. And part of that is like with the federal government has limitations on how much THC can be in hemp material. So according to the laws of our country, industrial hemp is classified as having 0.3% THC or less. So that 0.3% at this point in time is capping out what we can do. And anytime I've seen CBD hemp go above 10% CBD, then that THC is
Super high.
tests hot. And so it's illegal and it has to be destroyed. So the whole goal is to raise the highest concentration of CBD without, triggering that illegal amount of THC.
Now, before you quit cannabis, did you experience that firsthand, like the old landrace strains versus what they're growing right now in Colorado, California, or Amsterdam, or wherever else?
To be quite honest with you, no. I mean, at that point, it was like I had pride in like finding
Yeah.
the highest knockout strains I could get my hands on. So I was just focused on like getting heavily medicated in order to escape what I was dealing with.
It might have been me, and it's very possible it was just me, but I thought I noticed a difference between what I was growing in the same exact strain in a tent versus sun
Mm.
grown outdoor organic. Like
No,
I,
I believe it for sure. And part of that is not just the CBD and THC, it's all those other compounds I've talked about. I mean, we're looking at CBC, CBN, CBG, CBDA. There's so many different compounds that we've created acronyms for that have medicinal value. And so, yeah, you could take the same plant, even a clone, right? Not even seeds, but you could take a clone of a plant, which is the same DNA, the same genetic makeup, put one inside and under a grow light and put the other outside under the sun, test them, and they're going to have two different chemical makeups. So CBN, for example, has powerful sedative properties. It's amazing for sleep support. And so you may have noticed like maybe the one you grew outside made you really sleepy. And that's probably because the CBN content was higher. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, even the light spectrum, the differences in what you could produce differently is very interesting.
Absolutely.
So, I guess once you started with a straight CBD, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a regime or like, how did you take it?
My preferred method of ingestion is the oil drops,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a tincture form, but it's not a true tincture. There's no alcohol in it. So we use MCT, medium chain triglyceride coconut oil, which is it's liquid at room temperature. It's been shown to have many health benefits in and of itself. It's a very healthy fat, plant-based fat, and we infuse the pure CBD into the coconut oil, and that's our oil drops. It's two ingredients. It's very simple. It's as close to nature as you can get. I drip it under my tongue. It's sublingually administered, which means it enters your bloodstream directly under your tongue, which skips the digestive process and gets to work very, very quickly. So when I take my CBD, I notice a difference within 20 to 30 minutes. I just feel kind of like an overwhelming release of anxiety. I can step back and take a deep breath, refocus, and that has been enough to kind of act as a catalyst for my healing journey so that I could step away from my symptoms for a couple of hours in order to consider, what are some overarching lifestyle changes I can make. When you're smoking all day, you're sitting on the couch, you're hanging out with people who probably aren't that great, you're lazy, you don't want to go up and get to the gym, you're eating junk food. It's just a culture that's not very health focused. It's ironic really, because you consider them to be like the organic earthy people, but there's so many other negatives that come with that.
So, do you take CBD every day now? And do you take breaks? Do you like cycle on and off? How does that work?
Yeah, so at this point, I consider myself 90% healed based on all the things that I've done. And the only reason I don't say 100% is because I do still have some lingering tics that impact my life. I would say compared to the average person who says, "Oh, I'm ADD, oh, I'm ADHD," I'm not that far off. We all suffer from that from a little for a little bit, probably because of this all day. Shifting my lifestyle has helped me tremendously. I used to have to take very high doses of CBD in order to get that relief. And as I've changed my lifestyle, as I've noticed healing, I have taken less and less and kind of stepped down. And quite honestly, that's how we recommend everybody dose their CBD, is start with a very small amount, increase as needed to feel your best, and then you can cut back, as you start to feel better and as things in your life fall in place and as you begin to heal. So that's kind of the routine, the regimen I follow. And today, yeah, I do take it every day. I take a morning dose to kind of get ahead of my anxiety for the day, just to help relieve inflammation and feel better. And it's just like a 25 milligram dose is what we typically recommend for adults. So it's just a half dropper, little bit of oil under the tongue, and I feel great. And some days I don't need it, some days I do.
So, have you heard anything about a taste test dosing? I think it was Ojai Organics I was talking to the first time when they recommended, in I'm talking about for people that were going through cancer treatments, people that
Okay.
were going through all kinds of different things, and then they said, look, your body is going to be able to tell you what your first or initial dosages would be. And they recommended taking it until the taste changed. And I forget whether it was like they said it'll be very sweet to you until you've hit the right amount, or and it was very interesting to me at the time. This is like
Yeah.
6 years ago, and it blew my mind, and maybe even longer now, because a friend of mine was going through cancer treatments, and that was one of the things that the doctor out there kind of recommended for him. And I was like, oh wow, like
Hmm.
it's wild.
Have you tried that?
No, I did try the Ojai that line, but I didn't try to dosage like heavy dosage like I
Yeah.
was a cancer patient, and this was
Sure.
specifically for him. So I was thinking, and how much money he was spending on it at the time too. Like
Mm.
I'm not going to drop a couple $100 just to see for
Yeah,
the next
seriously.
30 days what's going to be right for my system. I just tried a little bit, and at the time, honestly, I was still smoking and growing, and I couldn't differentiate anything that I was taking from anything else at that point. I was smoking from the time I got up to the time I went to sleep.
Yeah, I can relate to that, man. No, I've never heard of the taste test, to be honest. That's really interesting.
I'll look it up now after this podcast. I'll look it up and I'll send something over if I find it, because it was very interesting to me at the time.
I imagine that's like full spectrum oil.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So the thing about the difference, and we can touch on that real quick. So full spectrum oil is basically a crude extract. They extract the oils from the plants and they put that in a jar, maybe with a carrier oil like MCT
Hmm.
or some kind of carrier oil. We've taken the refinement to, we've taken another step towards making it very pure. So our product is virtually tasteless. It's just CBD and that coconut. You might get a little bit of that coconut oil flavor, but you can't taste the CBD at all, which makes it very palatable for like kids or people who are adverse to that grassy herbal flavor. So yeah, that's probably not going to work for my product because you can't really taste it at all. But
Got
that's
it.
really interesting.
Yeah, I'll go back and take a look at it, because I think it was interesting the way that they had presented it to this patient was like, oh, look, right now you're just starting to go through chemo and all of these other things, and literally there might not be a top end to what we're going to tell you to take.
Mm.
Your body will just tell you. So I need to go back and study that. Just so I should have studied it ahead of this. You took the CBDs. You realized it was working. You realized you wanted to start this company and actually give those people in your life and in your social circle the product. What like did you encounter along the way? Did you like realize, oh, this is good for all of these other things, and how else did you expand?
Sure. I mean, I had an understanding of how it worked in the body just from being involved in the industry for a long time. Like I had friends whose parents were in chronic pain and they would use, cannabis products to help relieve their pain or help them go to sleep. I just realized when you can consider the powerful anti-inflammatory properties of CBD, how many illnesses and health problems are driven by inflammation. And so if you can cut to the root of that, like I mentioned, in the beginning of my journey, I was using pharmaceuticals to mask the symptoms while ignoring the root of the problem. CBD does the exact opposite. It targets the root of the problem. It targets the inflammation and reduces that. So then all of my symptoms follow suit. All my symptoms are reduced because the driver of those symptoms is being treated. So it's a very, in my opinion, it's a more medicinal, more holistic focus by far. And the anecdotal evidence spoke for itself. I'd give these products away to friends and family, started selling them here and there, and they'd come back and say, "Man, I need more of that stuff. Like I slept better than I've ever slept in my life after taking it." Or, "Man, I gave it to my dad and he rubbed it on his knees." He was like, "Oh, whatever, son." And 30 minutes later, he's like, "My knees don't hurt. Like, let's go throw the football." And just like incredible testimonials like that vouched for it and kind of instilled that vigor in me to be like, let's do this. Let's go all out with this and make it your full time thing. And it's just been so cool.
The farmers that I worked with in Southern California they did both alcohol tinctures and straight other oil tinctures, but then they would soak their feet in it. And I was like, "What about
Mm.
you're soaking your feet? Why are you guys soaking your feet?" And they're like, "Oh, your feet won't hurt, your knees won't hurt, your ankles won't hurt." I'm like, "All right, guys, I'll try it. I'll try anything once." But it was very interesting. So,
That's cool.
do you sell in all 50 states? Do people order from you in all 50?
Yeah, we have shipped to all 50 states, even Hawaii and Alaska, which it's pretty expensive to ship over there. But yeah, all 50 states, man, it's amazing. We're based here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a relatively small town, but it's growing quickly. We've got one of the leading research universities and hospitals here, University of Virginia. We have an amazing biotech sector here, some companies that are known worldwide. And so it's been a great hub for me to start my business and get that support and network with people who really know what they're doing.
So, do you go to conventions? Do you do anything on the business side of this that kind of helps you?
I used to do a lot of conventions. I used to do every farmer's market in the state. I used to go to conventions. I have cut back on that. We've really kind of shifted our focus to e-commerce because it's just such a powerful way to reach people. A lot of people, especially those who are sick, they're not going to go to a farmer's market or a convention. They're at home. And so, how do we reach people at home? through the internet. And so that's been a really amazing tool to connect with people. And not only that, but they can just reach out, shoot me a DM, and we can have like a one-on-one conversation, right? They can see the testimonials that other people have left on our website. They can read up and get, take their time and educating themselves through the resources on our website. It's just been great. It's a much more scalable model for me because I don't personally have to show up at the farmer's market every Saturday or fly out to Las Vegas for a convention or something like that. So it makes sense from my perspective and from the customer's perspective.
And what are the testimonials you get the most? I mean, obviously, you're reaching out to people and educating them on pandas, but I'm sure you had all kinds of other people that have said what this works for.
Yeah, it's expanded a lot. And I think the top 3 ailments that people reach out to us about are pain management, anxiety reduction, and sleep support. And I get it, right? Because if you're not sleeping, if you're feeling pain all day long, if you're anxious, like that's going to disrupt every aspect of your life. And so you got to get that under control, right? So a lot of these people have reached out to us after exhausting all of their options, kind of like I did. We've been to every doctor. We've scoured the internet and read everything there is on what we think we have. We've tried all the conventional treatments, maybe even unconventional treatments like acupuncture or massage or what have you. And then finally they're like, okay, I'm going to try CBD. My neighbor, my woo woo neighbor told me, to try it. And then they say, oh my gosh, this worked. Lately, it's been a lot of parents because my product is 100% THC free. It's actually safe for everyone, including kids. And like I said, when I was 13 years old, I would have loved to have access to this at that time instead of resorting to like the illegal form. So a lot of parents are reaching out to us. And again, I'm not making any health claims here, but they are giving it to their kids with ADHD and autism and anxiety disorders with incredible results. I mean, it's like night and day is what one of the parents wrote on the site. Like it's night and day with my kid. Like they're getting up and going to school and they're getting a good report from their teachers. Just incredible testimonials.
Well, literally, those top 3 things that you mentioned are what the top 3 scripts for THC, for
Mm.
cannabis, are in California, where I was at. And you definitely, I mean, I don't want to say you see an epidemic there, but you do. And it's okay. Most of these people aren't there because of marijuana, but there are a lot of people that have gone down the road starting with marijuana and alcohol and all
Hmm.
of these other things and end up on the street. So it hasn't really solved
Yeah.
much. And, maybe we touched on something earlier with the land races versus the high THC content and what's really right for the market and what's right for individual people. And we'll probably never get back to what the original plant was.
Mm.
So maybe CBD is the answer. Is there a movement in Virginia to fully legalize marijuana? I mean, where is it at there?
Yeah, there has been. I think every year there's a bill presented to the House of Representatives about legalizing, but man, could talk about that's a whole nother conversation. Nobody wants to be the politician that legalizes marijuana. that's that's just the fact of the matter. It's not like top of their priority list at all. And it seems like the current administration here is looking at descheduling it or putting it down to Schedule 3, meaning it won't be classified the same as heroin anymore.
Mm.
So we can actually start doing more research and prescribing it to people and stuff like that. But just a word of caution, like just going through what I went through. THC absolutely has its medical benefits and its medicinal benefits, but it is not for everyone, right? If used inappropriately, it can definitely cause harm. I think legalizing cannabis is absolutely a step in the right direction. I think normalizing cannabis use across the board is a step in the wrong direction. Like we need to treat it like any other medication, which is what it is. It's an incredible plant. It has medicinal value. If you want to use it recreationally, I'm not out to judge you in any way, but I'm saying just be careful. Like it's a slippery slope like anything else, right? You go out and have a drink with your friends, it's fine, but you wake up in the morning and you have to have another drink, a red flag. So kind of the same with this. You can use it medicinally or you can abuse it. And that's a fine line sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
there's a raise in frequency of schizophrenia and all these other things that
Mm,
are probably stemming, and I think they've almost definitively proven it's from high THC cannabis and the overuse. So there's
mm,
definitely going to be downsides to everything that people go out of their way to get the most of, and like we said
right.
before, breed these qualities into it that are kind of off the wall or a little bit unnecessary.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So, and that was my experience too. I would use it medicinally, but I would also use it not medicinally. Like I convinced myself, yeah, every time you're smoking, you're using it medicinally, you're helping with your symptoms. But I mean, there were plenty of times when I was hanging out with my buddies and I was I was intoxicated, I was feeling good, but you'd keep going, And so it's just being mindful about that stuff, being responsible. There's too much of a good thing with pretty much everything on earth.
For myself, it's funny. Because I smoked for 20 something years, 25 years, and never really saw an issue with it. But and I got off of alcohol, got off of all these other
Mm.
things, and I was still just smoking, and I thought I was doing everything the right way. And then I realized something. I was training jujitsu, and a lot of jujitsu guys smoke. It just goes
Yeah.
hand in hand. You do this physical combat stuff, and then it takes the pain right away, almost instantly. But I realized something. I went to compete. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to smoke before I compete. That way I got a level head. And it was the weirdest thing because I felt like I was so high doing this competition when I hadn't
Wow.
smoked. And I realized, okay, I flip flopped my life. I am sober when I'm
Mm.
smoking a ton, and I'm not so sober when I haven't smoked. So
Isn't that interesting?
yeah, it's mind boggling. And yeah, of course, like what you said, if you spent that much time on the farms and you were in that lifestyle, it was normal, completely felt normal, it was satisfying. But you come to a point, I think a lot of people come to the point where they realize, oh crap, I just had an anxiety attack or some kind of
Mm.
almost mini panic thing, or I had some kind of something come up where you're like, oh, this has just got to be because I've smoked too much for too long.
I experienced that. I had one true anxiety attack, and I don't mean I was stressed out. I mean my body locked up. I was frozen in terror. I could not move my body, and I remember like yelling out to my wife like, what's happening? And I mean, it was just I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That it was horrible. And that's when I realized like, man, something has really got to change. And so I've written a blog about all these lifestyle changes I've made in more detail and more depth. I've been writing a book for the last year to go really in depth about this and telling my story and encouraging people with what I've done. And I'm expecting to release that this summer. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll send you the link. You can go on and just put your email in here, and I'll send you an email when it comes out. But I just want to use that as a tool to encourage people because, like we've talked about so many amazing things. I bet people listening have a whole bunch of questions, like what even how CBD works in the body, right? We can talk about the endocannabinoid system and how that works, and endocannabinoids are produced naturally. They resemble the compounds we've been talking about, THC, CBD, but they're innately produced in our bodies if we're in homeostasis, if we're getting the right inputs, if we have a healthy lifestyle. If we don't have any of those things, then we need to supplement with the plant-based compounds, right, in order to feel better. What you just described may have been in effect, like you in jujitsu feeling great, exercising, your mind's right, and those juices are flowing, your endocannabinoids are flowing, you're feeling good, your endorphins are rolling, and then you smoke, and it's like, woo, now you're out of balance. Now you're out of whack. It's really fascinating.
Well, I also realized that after years of smoking and 100% being medicinal, that I had gone through so many lifestyle changes that when I started actually having the thoughts of do I need this and should I stop this, that it was my body actually telling me, you've actually done what you needed to do here, and you
Mm.
can take a different road. You can actually turn the page and try this next chapter out sober. Honestly, I wouldn't have the podcast had I not stopped. And
Right.
I stopped once, and I went for 6, 7 months, and I smoked some more again. And then I noticed a couple things. I'm like, oh, what am I sitting around for when I could be, doing something else more productive? And I think a lot of us went through that, and we had those acknowledged moments where we just went, okay, maybe it's time to put it on pause. It's done its job medicinally, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. It's insidious. I mean, you don't even realize what you're doing, and especially with cannabis, I think it's so easy to justify the use in your mind and tell yourself, "No, I'm not lazy. I'm not lethargic. I'm doing my thing." And then once you stop, you realize how lazy you actually were.
Or how much more you can do, for sure.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell my mom all the time. It's like I do a lot of outdoor labor. I do the jujitsu, and it's very profoundly real that the more I do in a day, the more I actually can do.
Mm.
So you don't really acknowledge those things when you are sitting around sometimes and relaxing a little bit too much.
That's cool, man. I like that.
So, brother, your purpose is amazing. Your message is amazing. What advice do you have for individuals who are, going through any of these afflictions, whether they're going to their doctor to get results on something? Do you have a general advice that you give to people who are kind of frustrated with the system or frustrated with the process?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I've coined the term the three S's. It's stop, start, and smile. So in a nutshell, you got to examine your life, right? You got to stop doing the things that are impacting you negatively, right? Maybe that's getting off alcohol, getting off the smoke. Maybe it's just like stop eating junk food, stop eating ice cream all day, like, right? Maybe it's stop hanging out with people who are negative influences on you, right? Is the exact opposite. Start doing things that make you feel whole and fulfilled. Start doing the things that you're passionate about that you've been neglecting, right? Whether it's out of laziness or in maybe it's not accessible. Figure out how to do more of those things. Like, for example, playing drums is an amazing outlet for me. Whenever I'm using all my arms and legs at once, I'm focused on the music. I have no tics whatsoever. And this was even true during the worst part of my life. It was like a moment of escape for me that was healthy and natural and productive, and I could cooperate with other people as we play and jam together. That's like soul food right there. So start doing things that feel whole, start eating right, start exercising, start reading books, start doing things that benefit you and help you live a better life. The final S is smile. So find ways to be joyful during this because it's so easy when you're dealing with sickness or disability to just feel lonely and isolated and depressed and woe is me. And it's easier said than done. But once you can get out of that mindset and go into instead of being negative and focusing on all the things you don't have and all the things that are wrong with you, focus on what you do have and what is going well for you, because I guarantee you no matter how bad you have it, there are things to be joyful for in life and thankful for. And so really just, you can start a blessings journal, right? Just take a notebook, carry it with you everywhere you go, and as you encounter things that are good in life, just write them down. And pretty soon you'll realize like how many awesome things you have in your life that you're not thinking about, you're maybe taking for granted, right? So that's what I recommend people do.
That's a great piece of advice, brother. Smile, and it changes the self-talk. It really does. It changes the dialogue that inside is not serving you. It's not serving the purpose. It's not serving your betterment and your adaptation or evolving in the right ways. I'm
The
grateful
smile
for
is
that.
contagious. I would tell my story and smile. I noticed you smiling. It's like even across the internet, right? It's like amazing. I smile at my little kid. She smiles back at me. It's like it's a phenomenon. Just like smile, force yourself to smile. Smile more. It'll actually make you happy. Like the physiological response has been studied. If you force a smile, even if you're feeling bad, it'll actually make you feel a little better. It's crazy, but it works.
100%. And unfortunately, so many people are staring at their screens now. Like you can go
Mm,
through your whole day without seeing how many smiles there actually are or should be.
facts. You're right.
And being present, you touched on something else, but getting into an activity like that. I tell people all the time, I'm like, jiu-jitsu is one of those things where you get on the mats and you can't really worry about your bills or your things that are outside of that place. You got to be focused and in the moment and kind of reacting and living and doing, and just that is medicinal in itself. And
Mm,
that's awesome advice, brother. You nailed it. I like it.
thank you, my friend.
Anything else you want to tell us? Green Valley Nutrition, first and foremost. We're going to go check out your CBDs. Which product would you actually recommend first and foremost to anybody out there for the general population, people that don't necessarily have ailments but are getting ahead of things?
Yeah, so our best seller and the one that I take every day and what I recommend generally is our 1000 milligram CBD oil drops. So there's 1000 milligrams of pure CBD in every bottle. You get 60 servings. So if you're taking a once daily dose, it'll last you 2 months. It's fast acting, really remarkable product. I call it the original because that was like I've been taking that for years. That was like my original formulation that worked for people, and we've continued on that path to this day. The gummies are also very, very popular. Uh, And in fact, you walk down the supplement aisle today, like everything's a gummy now. People want their vitamins sugar coated. It's like, there's only like 3 grams of sugar in a gummy, so it's not going to kill you. But if that's an easier way for you to actually take your supplements, it may be a better option. We just infuse the CBD into a gummy. They taste delicious. So that's another option as well. And I also might want to mention, this is great for not just humans, but for pets. I mean, we have dog treats and oils, low strength oils for pets, cats and dogs. They're super popular. I mean, I've gotten new customers on board with us because they give our treats to their dog. They see how much better their dog is behaving, or how their pains went away, or how a dog who's in pain laying around all day will now want to go play fetch with you, and they think to themselves, man, maybe I should be on this stuff. So so you can use your pet as a guinea pig. But no, like I said, it's safe, easy to use. So I would first check out the tincture, the oil drops, just because that's the most versatile. It's easy to dose, it's easy to manipulate your dose and find what works for you, and it's very fast acting.
You take that in the morning or before you go to sleep?
I do. For most use cases, I would say it's a better idea to get ahead of your symptoms for the day. So if you can take it first thing in the morning to kind of feel better, get over your anxiety first thing in the morning, typically the rest of your day will go better. You're setting the trajectory for your day based on what you do in the morning. So I would say, especially, and I always serve that with a dose of lifestyle change too, right? Like if you're dealing with severe anxiety, don't expect like a little bit of CBD to just get rid of all your aches and pains. It will help with your anxiety, but you also need to like turn your phone off before you go to bed. Have that moment of quiet personal time. Do some deep breathing exercises. Maybe meditate. Maybe read scripture or your favorite book. Do things that help you feel whole and calm before you start your day. And I guarantee you the rest of your day will go better.
Awesome.
So that's why I recommend. And then if you want to use it for sleep, take it before bed. But that's obvious.
Now, I have a morning routine. It's very similar, man. I do the same things every day. Get the
Mm.
journal out first thing, and get out in the sun, sit there, and do my breath work, and take my time. I think that's incredible advice.
That journal may be in a museum one day.
It won't be in a museum. I know mine won't be. Mine definitely will not be in a museum. Even if I put it in a time capsule, they'll be like, "Dang, this guy was really happy about some weird stuff." But it is what it
That's
is.
cool. It's good for you, man. Like I said, that blessings journal, man. You're just writing about things that make you happy. Like it carries with you. There's something special about writing it down that like
Mhm.
seals it in your mind and makes you even more thankful. And even the bad things too. You write down the bad things, it's like kind of washes it away, right? Like getting it out instead of you're angry at someone, instead of go yell at them, write it down, and it kind of feels better without causing more strife in the world.
Well, I'll go a step further. I just watched a post the other day about the actual exercise of writing and how it rewires your brain in itself. So
Mm,
most people are on their phone all the time. They pick their phone up from the day start to the day finish. They get
yeah.
on computers and they type out what they got to for their bosses, but they don't actually sit there, take a pen to paper, and let the neuroreceptors draw all these conclusions. It's an action, it's an activity, it's an exercise, and it
Mm,
rewires your brain every day. So it's definitely something worth doing.
that's powerful.
Ethan, thank you so much for being here, brother. Thanks for sharing this message, and hopefully we'll get it out to somebody who's going to benefit from it. I know you will. You're going to keep doing this. People, go to Green Valley Nutrition, check out this line. They can email you, they can drop a line on your website.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a contact page there. You can email us. My email is ethan@greenvalleynutrition.com. So feel free to reach out, man. We're here to help.
And also, I'll be putting your Instagram in the show notes and the links, and they can shoot you a message on there if they want to follow
Yep.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I post some pretty heartwarming, funny stuff on there
Yeah,
too.
you
So
do. You do. You do. You post some stuff that's really actually uplifting, and it's very cool.
thanks, brother.
Well, thank you for joining me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah, that was rad, bro.